goes. Too many things that was going on, and my little computer couldn't handle it. So when you get something new, you have to like make sure all your connections are working. Too many things that was going on. There we go. And my little computer couldn't handle it. So, all right.
Oh, I hear you. All right. Woohoo! So you're sharing the Facebook also, you said?
Yep.
And you can do all that. You can share it here and over there.
Yep. Okay, it's posting. All right, we're good.
All righty. I'm thinking, shit, should I go on Facebook and watch it?
If you go on my Facebook page, you can share it from there onto yours. My Love Being page.
Yeah, because I'm guessing that. Oh wait. Oh, it's not live on Facebook, right?
It is cross posting, so we're still live on YouTube. It's showing live on Facebook.
Okay. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
And so folks would need to come here.
I got it.
Yeah.
Cool. I was like, okay, so I'll leave it right here so I could see the. All right. All righty then. Now that we got that. Oh, wait. Why am I not seeing this shit? How come I don't see us?
Oh, I see what's happening. It's it's a setting issue on my end. Like I said, new computer, setting issue.
Okay.
So I put the hyperlink in there, but it's not showing us in real time.
Got you. Because I went to go look for. There we go. Now I'm back on. All right. Cool. Are we ready?
Ready?
Yes.
Yep.
Grand rising, grand evening, grand afternoon. Happy mother loving Sunday. Welcome to Brown and Spiritual AF. I know it's been a minute, people. Me and Isela have been doing a lot in our lives, right? A lot of changings, a lot of upgradings to computers, to ourselves, to our souls, to our emotions, to our finances, to our, what would you call it, to our careers, right? So here we are today to open up a little more in the realm of what, Miss Isela?
Well, I've been having a lot of conversations with folks recently, and one really kind of stuck with me. And this happened about 6 months ago. I was speaking to someone about her family, and we were talking about her family dynamics and how toxic it was, and how there's a bunch of sisters, and they don't get along. And so there's like 3 sisters, and so sometimes she gets along with one and then doesn't the other, and then it's like this triangle thing. And it had me thinking, because my conversation with her was about, why do you allow this to happen in your life? Like, I don't understand that. Like, it's a foreign concept for me to allow something like that to occur in your life. And I went into my whole thought process about living without attachment and what that really means. And I'm going to share that a little bit later. But this conversation really kind of had me thinking about how many folks, because her response to me when I asked that question was, well, we're family. and I'm like, but your family kind of like fucked you over 5 times. Like, there were financial issues, there's just so many things that has happened within the family that, and I'm not saying hold resentment and don't forgive. I just didn't understand why you would allow someone to treat you that way. And at what point do you say enough is enough? So I just went thinking about this concept of, but we're family. Like, family's supposed to stick together through thick and thin. And that really is not how I live my life. I think my family served a purpose, and I think an important purpose in my life, in terms of my soul contracts and the things that I'm here to do, and the learning that I've needed to learn, and the unlearning that's needed to happen, and the trauma healing that needed to occur. There's a purpose. But I also feel very strongly that at some point we get to say, this is not okay. This is not okay for me, because it keeps me in the toxicity of the relationship. And so that really just weighed heavy on my heart, like trying to understand why it's difficult for people to make that choice. And I've had then from that moment other conversations around friendships. Well, we've been friends since high school. Well, we've been friends forever. She's like a sister to me. Okay, so and at what point do you say enough is enough? You don't get to treat me that way. Like, what is it that keeps us tethered to people and allow ourselves to really be in toxic circumstances? So I thought it'd be a great conversation today. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, these are really great conversations, right? Because I'm pretty sure we've had similar conversations in the past about certain scenarios, but this one right here, right now, because me and Isela are constantly upgrading our lives in one way, shape, or form, right? So who we were in episode 1, we're not fucking that in episode whatever 20 the heck we are. Where we're at right now, I don't even remember.
We're 26 now.
26, right? We're 26 episodes old, right, people? We've been on this planet with this podcast for 26 episodes, right? So we see things different, and we've been able to heal and integrate things a lot. So I really enjoy these topics, because this topic will never be outdated, because there's going to be situations, scenarios that we constantly get into as we start up leveling, because we're changing and people change, right? And some people don't change, or they change in the opposite direction that we're going in. And so I really like this one, especially when it comes to friendships, right? Because I talk about a lot of family, and I've been utilizing my stories on Instagram a lot to talk about family and the things that I've been through, right? Like me and my brother just got into something just recently, right? And it's really funny because we're talking about change, and he holds on to an image of me that I used to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, I don't think he could get past that, really, or he does, but whatever triggers him, whatever activates him, brings him back to the past. And then when he activates something in me, it brings me back to my 10-year-old self, right? Last night I was partying, and I had a long night, right? And then my brother Joey went to sleep, because me and him had a conversation. We went out, we had a few drinks, right? And I act totally different now than I used to when I drink. You know what I mean? And it shows. And don't get me wrong, I still get activated at times, and I want to like fly off the handle sometimes. But we had really deep conversation, and then he went to sleep, and I was just sitting there thinking about stuff. And I knew this conversation was going to come up today, so I was a little nervous too, like, oh fuck, what's Mark going to say? So I got into my Snapchat, and I made a call, and like my dad did. Remember when we're doing the 21-day challenge, and my dad like called us on accident in Snapchat, right? And then me and my brother got. So I did that last night about 2:00 in the morning, right? And lo and behold, my fucking pops answers, right? And he said something really cool to me, right? He says, I don't ever answer the phone this late. He goes, but whenever it's ever you, your brother, or your sisters, I always answer no matter what. I was like, wow. It's like, Pops, why do you have your fucking phone on right now? He's like, oh, just in case. And that really made me feel kind of cool, because like I see him changing in the direction, right? In a different direction, how he's there and stuff like that. So I really enjoy this topic, man, because family and friends and where I'm at right now in the world, I've let go and trying. Okay, hold on. In the process of letting go of some friendships, right?
Yeah, it's tough. I think that culturally speaking, so as a Mexican American, I always say the Mexican American because on my mother's side, we were migrant workers. And so we were many generations here in the United States. And on my dad's side, my dad was born in Mexico. So I'm first generation on that side. And so culturally speaking, very different families, very different. I come from two very different experiences of life. But what is the same on both sides is how we care for family. And I don't mean like there is some toxic shit going on in the family. And that's because there's generational cycles of toxicity. And culturally speaking, culture has a memory. And so what happens is it's deeply rooted in how we engage with one another. And so over time, we just keep passing on the same shit to one another unless we're willing to step outside of that. And so one of the things, the messages that I have received is that we take care of our family, right? And it's something that I've broken away from, and they do not look kindly at me for that. And the reason is because, so for those of you who don't know my story at all, my mom disowned me when I married my husband. I hid my husband, who is Black, for 5 years because I got a message very early on when I was actually in high school and a boy liked me. And I was so excited because he was going to be in a talent show and she had come to the talent show. And I was like, oh my God, he's going to be dancing and blah, blah, blah. And I remember her face the moment she saw him. Like it never even occurred to me to say, oh, and he's Black. Like I was just excited to share him with her. And her entire face just fell. And I knew. And coming from an abusive home, like I just knew when some shit was going to go down, right? And so she had said to me that, no, that will never happen, blah, blah, blah. Well, that boyfriend I hid for 3 years. And then my husband now, who was boyfriend in high school, I knew him since I was 14 and we ended up together my senior year. And I hid him because I knew that there was no way. And I was threatened to be tossed out. Like she was going to throw me out. Like there was no way I was going to live in this house and date somebody who was Black. So when I told her that I was marrying him, I had already hid him for 5 years. And so when she stopped talking to me, like that was the end of our relationship. We were done. And she lied to all the family, told me it was like, I no longer wanted to talk to her, that she had given all this and did all this and that for me. And I went off and I was this selfish, whatever, doing my own life. That was not true. She literally disowned me because of him. And we had a tumultuous relationship. I mean, it was a culmination of things, but that was the final straw. And, but now when I look back at this, I stepped away from a very toxic relationship. My mom was narcissistic and probably bipolar, if I had to put a diagnosis on her, now knowing what I know. And I will tell you that because she disowned me, I was able to step away from that toxic situation and heal. If it was not for her, her disowning me, I would not be sitting here today. I would have been wrapped up still in the bullshit that she would pull. And I would still be seeking love, connection, and affection in any way that I could get it. And for me, the way that I looked for it was actually to accomplish things. So I would go seek out and do good things so that she would go, oh my God, I should be proud of my daughter. So when that happened, it was the greatest gift that could have been given to me. I stepped away and I could choose a different life for myself. And I had, it was a long road. I had to heal that. So for me, that was a huge lesson. And it was something that like people would say to me, I wish you had a relationship with your mom and she never got to meet your daughter. And I was like, bullshit. No, no, it is number one, not my responsibility to go back and try to fix that. Why are people trying to, it's like, that's not my fault. And I'm not going to carry that responsibility. And second, I don't give a shit if we were in a relationship right now, I would never drop my child off at that house. ever. I would say, wave to your grandma as we drove by. And that's as close as we would get because I would not ever expose my child to that type of environment ever. So I don't have that, oh, but what? I don't have that. I'm like, I'm at peace. I have so much gratitude and I have released her from the soul contract that she entered upon because she entered upon my experience and I was in her experience for a reason greater than our immediate understanding. And I get that now. So I say, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for the horrendous experience of life that I had because I get to now and I've healed and I get to help other people heal and I get to show up in a way that I wouldn't have been able to had I not had that experience. But that was an important lesson for me. And now in my life, no one gets to treat me that way ever. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're other family members, if you're friends, no one gets to enter my experience of life and mistreat me or somehow demean me, degrade me, talk shit about me. You don't get to be that in my life. And so that's huge for me. And so I struggle with people who are like, oh, but my husband, I'm like, well, fucking kick his ass to the curb. Like, I don't understand.
Go get another one. It is. It is. I mean, I can see why and how, right? Especially when it's like mama growing up, my mom would be like, you and your brother are all you're ever going to have, right? Like imagine my mom telling me that no matter what, me and my brother are always just going to be there for each other. So imagine growing up as a child thinking that in my head that no matter what, my mom really thinks that I have to be there for each other. Right now, did I misinterpret that? Right? Because I had, like I said, I had a run in with my brother a few weeks ago, right? Where he was asking me questions about my profession, right? Just so he could argue it, right?
Yeah.
That's stupid. How was keeping a schedule going to make me better? How was this going to be? People pay you for this? How fucking idiots, right? It started because we were talking about a boxing match. And I said something along the lines of, there's a lot of money on the line. Do you think it's possible that this shit could be rigged? Right? I think it's possible. You know what I mean? There's possibilities are out there, right? And then he went into a big old tangent about people that think that are fucking stupid. They're idiotic. He didn't tell me directly right away, but he was saying people like that. And obviously I said that I think that this might be possible, right? So it kind of started like that. And it brought me back to when I used to be bullied by my family. Remember, I told a few of these stories growing up. I was like the weakest link in the family, right? And I was sitting there in this moment thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, is this guy? I told my friend, and then once again, I was drinking. We weren't heavily drinking at the moment. And I said to my friend, because he was being this way to my friend, also asking us questions just so he could argue with us about it, right? And I turned to her and I said, this motherfucker is not going to understand, right? And that activated him. Mm-hmm. Wrong choice of words for me. I didn't mean it in that form. It was just like, man, this motherfucker's not going to listen. Stop, right? You know what I mean? And he switched instantly. You see the look in his eyes, and he wanted to fight. Mm-hmm. And I could tell. It instantly brought me back to when I was 10. And my heart started pumping, and I started feeling like some type of way inside. However, I responded differently than I would have back in the day, especially with drinking and whatnot. And I think about this stuff because then I went a few days. I didn't tell my mom. I had to let it sit with me. I still stayed. And, me and my brother just had those conversations where we didn't talk about. We still haven't talked about it again, right? Because I have had these conversations with him later on before. Like, remember when I think I told the story about when I moved from Las Vegas to over here and then I made him get all the shit in his name, right? You know what I mean? It was one of those types of moments where he just thinks I'm fucking weird and I'm just different. Like maybe I might be brainwashed or whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? And it's kind of hurtful coming from your brother and shit like that, right? And so I called my mom and I messaged her. I then talked to her and I told her, hey, check this out, XYZ. This is how I'm feeling about this situation, this scenario. And you telling me a long time ago that me and my brother all were going to have kind of messes with my head right now. I know I'm on this journey and I'm healing and I'm cutting people off and I'm putting people at a distance, but with my brother, it's hard to set that boundary because I also thought, I think a few weeks ago, I went over to help him when he had his surgery, right? and we were healing, and we was getting over certain things. And then, just like you say, once you peel a layer, it goes fucking deeper.
Totally.
It
Yeah.
goes fucking deeper. And then I told my mom, I was like, I remember what plays in my head is you telling me that me and my brother are all we're ever going to have. And so I think this one hits a little deeper than the rest of my relationships, that I'm able to set those boundaries. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah. You know, what I find fascinating is that we do go back into being the 10-year-old, the 7-year-old, the 3-year-old with family. And depending on the roles that you had growing up, and it happens so quickly. And sometimes it's just a matter of going to somebody's house, like going to your grandmother's house or your mom's house or whatever. And all of a sudden you're like back in the birth order and people just play their roles out. I find that so incredibly fascinating. And that those unresolved perspectives and hurts and all of those things are at play. So, when you say something and he had a reactive situation, you were in a reactive state as well. It's not just what's happening in front of you, it's all the things from the past that are re-triggered, basically, is what happens. It's like that, it's like the suitcase, or it's all of a sudden it's tossed open and everything's flying every which direction, and you're looking forward, so all you see is what's happening right in front of you. And so this is why the healing process is so critically important, but not everybody wants to go down that road. And that's what's critically important, right?
Yes. You know what I mean? Because I think I know I do sometimes. I'm guilty of this. I feel like sometimes I have to step back and just be the observer sometimes, because I assume that other motherfuckers are doing the same shit that I'm doing.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
when you get sucked back into, let's just say, an environment, right, and then the suitcase opens, right, I'm processing things a little bit different, or at least trying to, but there's hooks that are in me that are being pulled out. So then the old scenario could replay itself again, because it's that cycle. It's what's normal. You know what I mean? We get in an argument, we fight, we get upset with each other, and then we go our own ways, and we come back together like nothing ever fucking happened.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the
And I think about that, right? Because when we do go back home and we go see our cousins, we go see family, and you look how, even though we might be different in our own lives, when we come together, we still hold on to these ideas of who somebody used to be,
yeah.
right? And then we hold them to that standard. And I think, like last night, I was talking with my dad, and I used to hold my dad to that standard all the time, because I used to thought he did all kinds of fucked up shit, but he really didn't. He was just doing things differently,
Mhm.
right? And so when we're having these conversations, I'm just like, wow, look how long that took.
Yeah.
Look how long that took.
Yeah, I think you hit a really important point about people, and what's happening is folks hold on to the old story, right? Because in general, and this is what I forget, I have to remind myself all the time. In general, the vast majority of people do not move through the trauma healing process. They don't. The vast majority of people are not seeking a life where they are introspective and trying to understand how they feel and what they think and how they can co-create their world and their life and their experience and how it connects to God. The vast majority of people do not think this way. Most people are living a day-to-day experience of life, and if they have spirituality or religion, it's more than likely religion that moves them, like they are doing what is good and they're being good people, and however they've defined that, and they continue to live that experience of life day to day to day to day. I have many friends who know what I do, who value what I do. But fuck that, I'm not unpacking that trauma. I am not unpacking my stuff. It's tucked away. It's been tucked away for 45 years. I do not have any desire to unpack that and know what to do with it. So people comfortably live in that state. And so one of the biggest aha moments for me, because when we get excited, I know when I get excited about learning something, I want to share it with people. I want to go, oh, did you know that you could blah, blah, blah? Or that's victim consciousness. Like you're in that victim state. If you change your mind about that, right? And they look at me like, what the fuck are you talking about? Right? It's like, I don't know what woo-woo shit you got going on over there, but I am not interested in that. And so a big revelation for me was to not share with people who were not interested. And that's huge because we want to share with the people closest to us. Not from oh, let me save you, because we've all had that experience, right? Where it's like, oh, you're going to go to hell and die. Let me save you. You got to come to my church. Not that. Just the excitement of being able to like feel better, feel like recognize that you can actually create new experiences of your life, let go of things that are like weighing heavy on your heart, like all of these things that you learn that you have the power to change. But I realize that folks don't all want to hear that. They don't want that experience. And so one of the things I've learned to do is just let go of any desire of helping others who are not seeking that first. Like I don't even offer, like I'll sit and I'll listen to people talk all kinds of amazing, crazy stuff, like they're toxic and they're this and they're this and they're this. And when if they turn to me and they go, so what do you think we should do? I'll go, oh, then I'll share. But other than that, I'm just the observer. And so I realized that everyone has their own path and their own journey, and it's not the same as mine. And that's okay. There's no judgment in that.
Yeah, I think that's where it gets, that's where, like I said, certain, like I'm okay with certain, with those things in certain areas, right? It's like, yeah, fuck you, go off in the world then. You know what I mean? I don't have to put my 2 cents in because I've always been that person that says, hey, check this out. If you do this, let me tell you, your life might change a little bit that way. You know what I mean? But I learned that real quick that, okay, that's unsolicited, like that's unsolicited fucking advice. They didn't ask me for that shit. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And then, but when it comes to family, you would think, right? Because of how we're taught that they're going to sit and actually maybe listen to you a little bit because you might have something,
No.
right? It is not, it blows my mind, right? That strangers on Instagram will reach out and ask me for help, right? Friends and family, they know what I do, but they don't fucking ask.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I learned that, my primary career was early childhood education. So I specialize in very young children, neuroscience around that, the impact of trauma. And when I had my daughter, I had already been working in my field for 18 years. And I remember my family saying to me, giving me advice about how to care for my baby. And I remember just sitting there as I was holding her going, do you know what the fuck I do for a living? Like, like I've been teaching this shit for like 18 years. Like, do you get that? Like, I got this. I am not asking for your advice because the advice was like fucking like old school shit that I knew was not good. Like you're going to spoil your baby. If you hold her, you're going to spoil her, which is the worst advice we can give. And culturally speaking, we continue to give that stupid ass advice. And you can actually not spoil a baby. The baby needs to be attached, needs to be connected to their caregivers, the people who love and care for them. And why do we all have attachment issues? Because we fucking left our baby crying for, because they were going to soothe themselves. And so when they were trying to give me advice, there was that part in me that was like, back the fuck off because I know what I'm doing and y'all fucked it all up. So I have a much easier time with setting those boundaries. And I think I go back to my mom. Thank God you disowned me. Thank God you disowned me, because I don't have a problem with saying this is not your space to say this. I really believe in my whole heart, you teach people how to treat you. You teach people how to treat you. And so if you make it okay for something to happen, then it's going to continue to happen. It's just that we are so afraid to stand in this place of assertion because the dominoes will fall, right? It's like I stand up and say, you don't get to do that anymore. You don't get to be that anymore. Then all of a sudden now everybody in the family is aware that we're having this problem and people start stepping in and giving their opinions. Like we don't have clear boundaries in families. And this is why people aren't willing to stick up for themselves and say what they think and what they feel and what they need. And then we don't heal. We don't heal.
No, they don't. And I see, because I sit down with my teammates, right? And they're a lot of them are having these issues right now, right? Some are in the family business, right? And don't really want to be, you know what I mean? But they feel like they need to be, right?
Yep.
Some are, let's just say, a part of a wedding family, right? Part of the wedding arrangements, and they don't know how to say, I don't want to do this, but because they're a brother or a sister, they feel obligated, right? You know, and I think about this stuff because let's just say like in the workplace, right? I think let's go back to the advice. It's funny when motherfuckers try to give me advice, right?
Yeah.
And I look at them like, what? Wait, hold on. You're trying to tell me how to take care of myself? You know, you look like you're about to pass out right now, right? Like you need to go to the doctor, or you might, whatever it is. And it blows my mind. And you just reminded me of that when you're talking about your family trying to give you these fucking toxic traits on how to take care of your child when you studied this shit. Right. And it blows my mind sometimes when I hear somebody from up top try to tell me how to do something. And I'm like, what? That's why I make the big bucks and you're over there raggedy as fuck. You know what I mean? And it blows my mind because I go back to times where I would relay over information that wasn't so great. You know, now what is it about people and not, is it, you think most people are just not aware that there's issues, or they do and they're just like, fuck no, there's nothing wrong with me? Like, do they know somewhere inside that, hey, something's up, but they just don't want to touch it? Or are they just fucking oblivious?
Both. So we are not born with the innate ability to self-reflect. So we're not born with that. That's something that has to be developed over time. There are literally adults walking around right now who have the inability to be self-reflective of how their behavior impacts others. And this is why you get folks who are like, I don't know what's wrong with them stupid, they this. And so when they're pointing outward and using the they people, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes that practice of being self-reflective, what why is this happening? How did I contribute to this situation? How am I thinking about this? How do I feel about this? They're so disconnected from that because they've not practiced it, or they've never practiced it at all. And so if you have grown up in a family, or you didn't have those opportunities, even in schools, it's unfortunate, but because of how our school system shifted many years ago, it's getting better again now, but there's more speaking to rather than helping learn to think and think critically. That critical thinking process is it's a self-reflective process. Why do you think this happened? What do you think is going to happen next? How do you make sense of that? How is your perspective different than someone else's? That process helps us become self-aware. And a lot of folks have not engaged in that in ways that are rich and meaningful. And then I think that there are other people who it hurts too fucking much. And if I fill my life with work, or it could be any of the addictions as well, if I smoke, if I get on my device, if I just get distracted enough, then I don't have to pay attention to how miserable I feel. Now, people who've experienced significant trauma, they're not connected to their emotional state. So their bodies are screaming at them. Their bodies are having an emotional reaction to certain things in their lives, and they just keep shutting it down by drinking, by smoking, by being distracted, by shopping, there's lots of ways that we just stay disconnected. And even in the spiritual community, this happens for people who they're not connected to their emotional state in their body, and they stay up here. They stay in their thinking process. And this is what we call spiritual bypass. So they stay here, and their body's giving them messages that they're uncomfortable, that they're not feeling great. They're not feeling well. They're feeling frustrated, irritation, anxiety, all those things. And they're like, nope, I'm not even going to let myself feel that. I'm going to change my thoughts, and that's going to change my experience. This whole body connection is an incredibly, incredibly important part of the healing journey. And so I think it's too painful for folks. And I think in the spiritual community, folks are like, I can just think this through and ignore my body.
Yeah. I think I get caught up in that sometimes too, because I spend a lot of time alone. You know what I mean? But you said something really, you've said in the past and recently that in order to work through certain traumas, you have to be put in that environment. You have to be put in that connection, like in order to heal intimacy relationship.
Yeah.
Right? You
Are you talking about the relationship? You can't heal relationship. Yeah. Outside the context of relationships. Yeah.
And I was thinking about this on different levels also, like, how do I expect to heal my intimate relationships and my friendships if I don't actually go out with my fucking friends, or if I don't go out into the world and utilize the gifts and the trainings that I've learned, right? I can't do that from my bed. I can't do that from watching fucking Netflix by myself every night, or reading a fucking book all the damn time, or just listening to uplifting videos and only doing podcasts. You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong, when I sit down with my teammates, right, with clients, and I'm learning and I'm getting knowledge and gaining stuff through them, at the same time, I'm not out in the world gaining that experience to have different experiences versus the ways I used to. And so I think that's what I did, you know what I mean? Last night I went out and I almost didn't, but I was like, you know what? I don't ever go and do these types of things. And I don't have to be down on myself for having some alcoholic beverages. I don't have to be down on myself for being at a bar, right? Am I going down this rabbit hole again? Right? Or can I go out, dip my toes in the water a little bit, have a little bit of fun, and then get my ass home? You know what I mean? And so I think, like you said, because a lot of us in the spiritual realm, sometimes we want to stay right here, right? Oh, I'm too good to do this. I'm too good to do that. But I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not being well balanced over here. I'm not getting harmonized. Like, I can't stay in one area for so long because my emotions start coming up. And not that I feel lonely, but having contact with other human beings that's not for work or not for my business, right, is different. Like, I work in a restaurant, right, and I'm around people all the time, but that's different than being in a setting that's social, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And, when you look at, so one of the things that I teach is about the four sacred parts of our sacred journey, right? And, it's our intellectual self, our sacred self, our physical self, and our emotional self. Those are the parts that we're working to integrate, but they cannot happen in isolation. And so what that means is you'll get to a certain point in your spiritual journey that you can do on your own. You absolutely will get to a better healing place. And a lot of the work initially is to some degree on your own. But when you've got like real trauma, there's this thing called co-regulation. It's the polyvagal theory that you really need people with you to help you regulate when you haven't had good models or support system growing up or even into your adulthood. And so having people around you and being in union with others is a critical part of spiritual development. It's one of the things that isn't really spoken about a lot. And what happens when people start to heal and really go down this spiritual journey is we do a lot of isolating of ourselves. And so making connections, and this is why these groups that we form, even if they're virtual, we're connecting with others and we're having these meaningful conversations with each other. And that's creating what they're good feeling experiences inside of us. Now, these good feeling experiences is a release of chemicals in our body that help us actually heal. And so these connections, conversations, going out and doing things is a really important part. But you also have to be selective of who you surround yourself with. So if you want to, you get to be challenged by it if that's what you want. If you go out with friends and family that aren't going to activate you, probably 90% in your mind, you're like, yeah, some shit's probably going to go down tonight. Then you have to really think, is this healthy for me? Like, do I want this? And if I want to practice, because you can practice, you can go out and you can practice saying, speaking up for yourself, saying what you need to say, then that's great. Keep practicing that. But you have to be able to create or be within the environment that really supports this continued learning or unlearning that we're doing. Because it's really an unlearning. A lot of us talk, and I talk like this too, where we're growing and we're developing, but what we're really doing is we're unlearning. We're unlearning the shit that we've had for the past X number of years, the patterns of behavior, the belief systems, the values, the things that we have continued to do. We're releasing those things. That's how we get to know who we truly are, is by letting go. And so it's unlearning old patterns of behavior that's kept us stuck. So we have to choose who are the people that we're going to surround ourselves with that help us really go deeper.
Deeper, right? Because as we continue to move forward on these journeys, right? Because we know about, people know about our parents. They know about the relationships that we've had with our family and whatnot. How has this showed up in your life recently?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. Has it showed up for you recently, or were you just contemplating on how you moved through another layer of the onion from past family issues or friendship issues?
One of the things that I actually am really good at these days, but it took a long time, is to really create boundaries with family members and friends. And I'm real honest about things. Like, I say what is acceptable to me and what isn't acceptable to me. And I say it in ways. And my last newsletter, was it my last one or the one before? Not this last one, the one before. I sent out a newsletter about communication, how we communicate with one another. Because what happens when you start to develop spiritually, you start to go, you know what? It's important for me to speak up for myself. Like when you start doing shadow work, that's what the newsletter was about. It was about shadow work. And that does shadow work automatically make you an assertive communicator? And it does not. Mm-hmm. You start to want to speak up for yourself, and you start to realize that you want to create these boundaries in your relationships, but you don't know how to do that because you don't even have the language to do that. You're like, step off, you're fucking blah, blah, blah. That's not assertive language. That's aggressive language. And it gets us in this cycle. And so then if someone else is activated and then you're activated and we're in the same hamster wheel. So you have to actually learn the language to say, I'm really uncomfortable with this conversation right now. I'm wondering what else we can do to make this a positive experience for you and a positive experience for me. And I know folks would look at me like, what the fuck are you saying right now?
I was just going to say that. Motherfuckers would be like,
what?
You little sissy? Like, what are you talking about right now? You know what I mean? Like, we got to think back to like, oh, did I hurt your feelings? It's like they get thrown off by versus saying, hey, don't fucking talk to me like that.
Yeah. And it's okay for you to say that, to say, hey, don't fucking talk to me like that. If you know that you can say that without somebody then coming back at you, because then you're going to have a fight. I mean, you're going to end up yelling at each other. If you say, hey, back the fuck off, let's figure out what we can do instead of this, because this shit ain't going to go down right now. So you can say it like that, but you have to come from a place of resolution. Where do we go from here? Because this isn't working right now. And that's what a lot of us, we don't we don't learn the language and the ways to engage so that we can establish clear boundaries with others. And so I think that for me anyway, I get to keep practicing those experiences. I get to, and I say I get to because most people are afraid. They're afraid of conflict. They're afraid of having hard conversations. People are afraid to speak their truth. But when you recognize that, fear is something we create. It's a story we're telling ourselves. That's all fear is. And so I want to share quickly the three different attachments, because I say this a lot. I live with non-attachment, and people think that I just am like disconnected to everybody. And that's not true. So attachment is like, I'm doing things in my life and I'm holding on to my outcomes. I'm holding on to the goals I have and the things I want to accomplish, and X, Y, and Z is going to equal this. If I work hard enough, I'm going to get all of this. And we're taught to be this way. We're taught in the United States to establish goals. I remember, like, what are you going to do in 5 years? Where are you going to be in 10 years? We're taught and trained to think in this way. And we become attached to the outcome. And when the outcome doesn't happen, we feel really shitty because I just didn't work hard enough, clearly, And so that's living with attachment. Not living detached completely is like, I don't give a fuck. And they're just not playing the game. They're like, I'm just going to sit here and watch Netflix. Bad shit always happens to me anyway, so I'm not going to do shit to change it. That's living with like detached, right? Living with non-attachment means that I'm all in. I'm living life to the fullest. I'm having all of the experiences because I know I can co-create. I know I can stand up for myself and love myself enough to say what I need and say what I want and believe it with my whole heart. And I'm not attached to the outcome at all. Where I completely believe that the universe has got my back and that the universe is going to continue to provide for me. And I just need to be all in. I need to wholeheartedly believe in my alignment with the truth of who I am. I need to continue to step forward, trusting the universe, and to continue to be self-reflective, to make sure and self-aware that I'm living what I say that I believe in with my whole heart. So to live with integrity. But I have no outcome expectation whatsoever. And that's how we learn to live without attachment, non-attachment. That I am all in, but wherever the universe wants to take me, I'm divinely guided, and I'm going to allow for that to happen. And so in my relationships, I'm the same way. So I go in full in a relationship, but I have no expectation of where this is going, or no expectations from someone else outside of, these are my rules. You cannot treat me like shit, but I don't have any expectations.
That's you know what I mean? You're right. We were taught to have expectations. We were taught that if we studied hard and we did the work to get that A, right? But what about the people that did study hard and did their best and still didn't get the A?
Think of your family, Mark. Like, don't you think your parents worked their asses off their whole lives?
Yeah.
My dad worked his ass off. My mom too worked their ass off their whole lives, and they're not millionaires.
No.
So that's a fucking false. And I can go into systemic issues of oppression and why, and this happens. And, there are lots of reasons why it happens. But just because you work hard doesn't mean that you're going to get in the end.
Yeah. I see that, because I've set goals. I got goals, right? And sometimes my goals kind of get in my way from manifesting something grander, something greater, right? Because I'm expecting a specific outcome versus now I'm going to Estonia for 3 weeks in July, right? And the way that unfolded, right? This is something I would like to pull towards me. I got into motion on certain things. However, I didn't know what it was going to look like, right? Friends helped me with my ticket, right? For my flight and whatnot. I paid for that right off the bat before I even knew I was going to get accepted for volunteering, right? I got accepted volunteering, which took the whole price of the ticket to this place for 3 weeks got waived, right? Another friend had a place that she has a room. It's like, here, you could come stay with me. It'd be X amount of money, way cheaper than if it was you going on your own, right? All these things just kind of just fell in place.
Yep.
Way smoother than I had thought, right? I barely decided in February, and here we are. Everything's already almost taken care of by July.
Yeah.
You know, I got out of the way, didn't know how it was going to happen. I just knew that it would be provided somehow.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
And I do that in relationships too. I do that. And again, I want to make very clear, because I think a lot of people struggle with boundaries because there's old stories in our families and even relationships, friendships that have lasted for a really long time. They're old stories. And setting boundaries and without expectations of the relationship, expectations is what gets us in trouble. That's what gets us in trouble. Now, I don't mean like expectations, like, what are your values? Your values, are you entering upon a relationship with somebody, if your values is monogamy, that we're going to be monogamous with each other, if that's a value of yours, that has to be in alignment. So it's not that you don't have expectations that someone's not going to cheat on you, but that's an agreement. Not everybody has that agreement. Some people are like, I don't want to be monogamous. That's not part of my makeup. Like, that's not what I'm looking for. But both of you have to agree on that, right? So whatever your values are, we want to make sure that we are in alignment or have an agreement of that. But I'm very clear about like where people can step and where people cannot step. And you have to have the courage to say those things. And so that's why the title, when our sacred journey brings us to crossroads, there's some times that we recognize when we start to notice the relationships in our life do not serve us. There's one person that continues to remind me that I'm not good enough, that, like you were talking about goals that you have, like there are people in relationships, that somebody says, you know what, I want to change my career. I want to change how I'm doing life. I want to do something different. And that person is almost like a little voice in the back going, oh, you won't ever accomplish that. Oh, you won't. No, that's stupid. Why would you want to do that? If you have that, that needs to go. That person needs to go. And that's hard because that might be your husband. That might be your wife, and you've been married for 25 fucking years. Or you need to say, hey, that's not okay with me. I mean, you can make it work if he or she's willing to make it work, but you got to say, stop that shit. Because I need to move in this direction, and either you come along with me, or we're going to have a different kind of conversation here. And that's what's really hard for folks. You know how I do readings on Facebook? Oh my God. Yeah. So many people that I lean into where I go, there's somebody in your life who is holding you back, who makes you feel like shit. And, we get to choose whether someone makes us feel a certain way, but it's a pattern. It's a pattern of behavior. And so this person undermines them, tells them that they're this, that, and the other, says, and sometimes there's power because they've got money. They're the ones who bring in the money. So then what do you do? What do you do? Right? And I think that's when we start to learn, grow, or unlearn and down this sacred journey and start to integrate the parts of ourselves and work on our shadows and stuff, we start to realize that we are not living with integrity, and living with integrity is from our highest self. That's the truth of who we are. And when we realize that, sometimes we have to make the decisions to say, this person is not a healthy person in my life anymore. And that's scary as shit for a lot of people.
Yeah, I could see how and why, you know what I mean? Because I was thinking back to like I like to take something that I've been doing that I do really great in my life, which is manifesting things, right? And then take that kind of that equation and pull it on over into my relationship and say, hey, this is what I get, this is what I do, this is how I kind of come about this, and to really put that into play with the relationships, right? And having these conversations up front. hey, this is what I like, this is what I'm looking for, X, Y, Z, and having those conversations up front so then there's no surprises,
Yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
then to be able to relate this information to existing, right? Because there's going to be people that expect you just to lay down every time they step on you, right? And they expect that from you because that's what they've done all the time, to then go ahead and set that boundary and say, hey, I'm not going to take this anymore. And they're like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Like, what?
Yeah.
You've always
Oh,
taken.
you try to change the dance?
Yeah.
You're trying to change the dance. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you and your brother. It's like he's stuck on who you used to be.
uh,
That's his memory of you. And so he's not letting you be who you are now. And so whenever there's a rift between the two of you, for whatever reason, he kicks back into the old you. So he's not giving you permission to be who you are. Yeah.
yeah. That's crazy. And it happens at work also, right? It happens in these other relationship areas where, you know what I mean, you do something a little bit different, like, whoa, what, who was that old person? And then they try to activate you to pull that other part of you out, because I catch
Yes.
that a lot. But I've been working on it so well. So once again, in the work environment, it's way easier in that setting because I know how to set those boundaries. There's just shit I won't take. But when it's in a family setting, like with a brother or a sister or a mom or a dad, right, it becomes a little more difficult. Or a friend that you've had for a long time. But I think pretty much a lot of my friends are already, you know what I mean? I did a lot of that in isolation. I isolated myself from the whole world to where I spent a lot of my time alone. And I'm like, uh-oh, I got to get out into the world and be able to create these relationships in order to have different outcomes.
Yeah.
And that's speaking up for myself and doing the things that I want to do and connecting with the people that I want to connect that actually resonate with me, right? Vibrational matches, not
Yep.
ones that make me feel like this, but ones that help add value, make me feel good, make me feel joy and happiness,
Yeah. So I want to share quickly because some people might be able to relate to this. When, as a parent, if you are changing a way that you approach supporting or disciplining your child, so let's say you have learned that this is actually damaging to your child or harmful to your child, so I'm going to do something different now, right? So you try something different, and your kid's like, "What? What's happening right now? Like, what the fuck is happening right now?" Even though that situation was unhealthy and not good for the child, you're trying to change the dance and the child doesn't get it. Okay, doesn't understand what's happening. Again, even though maybe it's not as scary or maybe it's more loving and supportive, it's still foreign to the child. So what the child does is the child now is going to behave maybe even bigger or does something that for sure is going to trigger the mom or the dad person, the adult caregiver. So because I'm trying to get you back to doing what's familiar to me, because I don't know what you're doing and I'm uncomfortable with not knowing. So they will behave in a way that will ultimately activate so that the parent does go back to their old ways. This is a natural thing that happens even in relationships, like with couples. Somebody is trying to change their way and the other one then tries to act all crazy to get the other person to act in the same way because it's the pattern that I'm most comfortable and most familiar with. The day I told my mom that I was leaving home to go to ASU, I remember my mom was very abusive. She was loud. She would throw things. She would grab my arm and bring me to the ground. I mean, she was very abusive in lots of ways. And I said to her, I was terrified. And I said to her, I'm moving to ASU. And so I'm leaving on Saturday, moving to the dorms. That was not in the plan. That was not what she agreed to. And I remember shaking. I was so scared. What she would normally do is scream, yell, throw things. She would explode. She didn't. She looked at me and she said, "What do you want me to tell you?" And I said, "You love me. You're my daughter and I'm going to support you." She said, "Well, I can't do that." And she walked away. I didn't know what the hell to do with that. Like, it was better. right? Then the
Yeah.
screaming and the yelling and the throwing and the fuck that, like that was better. But I was like, what just happened? Like, I don't know what to do because it was unfamiliar. Our brains want to kick us into what's familiar. So we keep repeating fucking patterns. And this is why a lot of people enter abusive relationships over and over and over and over again, because the brain seeks patterns, what's familiar. So we have to break that. We have to end that. And that's our own healing. And then we have to make decisions about who gets to be in our life.
Yeah, that's really powerful, because that is trippy, especially when you come into contact with somebody that's used to a certain level of intensity or not, right?
Yep.
And then I've had this in past relationships with women where I don't get crazy and rowdy. They start yelling and screaming. I can stay cool, calm, and talk it through, right? And they'd be fucking, what is going on here? Why is he not yelling back? Do you not care? Are you not in this?
Right.
XYZ, right?
Yeah.
But to me, that's I was able to stay cool, calm, and collective. And I think I learned that from my dad, because my dad had crazy bitches in his life sometimes, right? And these girls would yell and he would just stay calm, right? And so I kind of learned that, and to stay, because the yelling is not going to make it any better. But I could see how somebody would go bigger to
I
try
used
to
to do
pull
that,
that.
Mark. I used to do that. My husband is very calm, very calm. And he's feeling all kinds of stuff, but it's inside.
Yeah.
So he doesn't show it, right? And we were young, I mean, you got to remember, we got together when we were in high school. And so when I was young and still totally in this world of chaos, I used to push him and push him and push him, because I wanted him to feel what I was feeling. And I wanted him to have a reaction. And I would throw shit. I would take a hairbrush and I would throw it across the room at him. I would do those things, waiting for a reaction from him, and he wouldn't. And I didn't know how to be with that. I knew how to be in an explosive situation when somebody would fight back. I didn't know what to do with his calm. I didn't. And so that was a learning process, but that's what happens in relationships. So if you go into a relationship with those unhealed parts of yourself, you're going to try to recreate them in a new relationship. And it don't matter if it's Jack, Joe, Johnny, it don't matter who it is. If you have unhealed parts of you, you will try to recreate those experiences.
Wow. So, like, let's just, for instance, right? If somebody's in a relationship right now and they want to start creating different ways of responding, right? And their partner might be thrown off by that. Is this a conversation they sit down with their partner, or their new friendships, or something, or an old friendship, and say, hey, check this out, I want to start doing things a little bit different? Would they bring this to their partner's awareness, or will they just do it on their own?
I think it varies in every relationship.
Okay.
Every relationship is different. Sometimes the partner is not receptive. Sometimes they are. So one of the big aha moments in my relationship with my husband is I used to blame him for all the things he wasn't doing that I needed, like my needs needed to be met. And one day I heard, or somebody said, I don't remember where it came from, are you doing the things for him that you want him to do for you? So I started to change how I looked at him. So I started to change, instead of like what he's not doing, starting to recognize why I appreciated him. And all of a sudden my feelings about him changed. Like I wasn't like irritated as much. I didn't have as much angst, or like, just like, why the fuck is the garbage not thrown yet? I stopped doing that. I was like, my husband is a really good person. Like he's a really good man. And I started to recognize that all the things that I appreciate about him. And all of a sudden my whole feelings about him changed, and how I engaged with him changed. And so I didn't need to have that conversation with him, because that was an inside job. That was a choice for me to see and appreciate things that he brings to the relationship. Now, in the past, my conversation used to be, well, this is what I need you to do, and this is how I need you to feel, so that I can feel. Like that's what it used to be. And then I realized, oh, how am I showing up? And how am I make meaning to our relationship and the things that he does? So it's going to depend. Other times, if you're in that place of explosivity, I would actually have that conversation saying, these are the things that I'm working on. And I wouldn't say, this is what I need you to do initially. I would really start working on myself first, because we tend to point the finger and project our own bullshit. Stuff that we haven't healed yet, we're pointing and saying, this is what you need to do. And it's really about us.
Yeah, it's really, I noticed that when versus somebody asking me questions versus telling me, right?
Right.
Hey, and I've got my teaching style and the way I coach, or the way I converse with my coworkers and or management, right? Because they're in a spot where they don't know, they don't understand, right? And if we start right here with us and we start utilizing the tools that we're learning and approach this differently, we're going to get the different outcomes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hi, Nina. Are you still with us? I don't know if Nina is still with us, but she was with us early on.
Hi, y'all. Excited to hear this chat is what she said. There's 5 people watching. Does anybody have any questions before we wrap this up? Because we are at that point, right?
Any questions or comments about what we're talking about? Because this is a topic that we could go on and on and on and on and on. I mean, I think it's a subject that a lot of people struggle with.
Oh, big time, right? And it, like I said, we've had similar close conversations before. And as like I said before, as we peel back an onion, peel back another layer, and it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And sometimes it'll be with the same person, right? But you just hit another level of trauma. So
here's another thing too that I didn't mention that's important. You can love someone and still have a very clear boundary. Those two things can exist. You can love someone and decide you don't want a relationship with them anymore. You can absolutely do that. You can hold space in your heart and have love for a friendship or someone in your family and say, thank you very much, but this chapter in my life is done. And that's okay. I mean, I had a really, really good friend of mine. We were friends from high school, and our values shifted, and I was really going down this journey. And every time I talked to her, she was in the victim consciousness, and she just talked about all the things going wrong in her life. And it was the same over and over and over and over again. It was weighing heavy on me because she was coming to me to talk about the same things over, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I'm like, either you decide to make some changes, because I can't carry this for you anymore. Like, I'm not that for you anymore. And so I slowly started to provide some distance between us. And I just said, thank you. She was an important chapter in my life. She really, really was. She was such an important part of my 20s and my 30s. And we are just in different places right now. And so I appreciate the time that we were friends, good friends, but we're not friends anymore. And that's okay.
And there's that gift, right, of being able to recognize what they left you with, to be able to give you the opportunity to say, hey, this is as far as we go.
Yeah.
Right. This was a wild ride, but I'm not into this roller coaster anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions.
All right.
Thank y'all very much for tuning in to another episode of Brown and Spiritual AF. You can find me at Mark_my_magnificence. And I don't really have a lot going on in my life right now, but other than getting to Estonia for 3 weeks, it's going to be amazing. Miss Isela, what do you have going on your end?
Well, you can find me at iselagarcia.com. I also am live. I go live on my Facebook, which is Love Being, Bridging Trauma Healing and Spiritual Development. And I also have Love Being on Instagram. And I'm trying to go live more on Instagram, but I just pop up and do these live readings. And I really enjoy that. But I'm inconsistent about what day I'm on, so you have to just follow me and then set your notifications. And once the notifications pop on, you let me know if you would like a quick reading. You can stay connected to me that way, and also sign up for my newsletters. I have this. I'm creating right now the process of practicing how to forgive. And so I have a guide that I am writing. I'm almost done on just the journey of forgiveness and how to really practice doing that in your life. And so I'm hoping, if you want to take a look at that, go to my newsletter, sign up, or go to my website, sign up for my newsletters, and then you'll be notified once that's available. And that will be free. That will be free to everyone.
Dope. And if you haven't had a reading yet, even these little mini readings Miss Isela does, she is really on point. It
It's
blows
scary,
my
huh?
mind. It blows my mind, right?
Mine too.
Yeah. She was like, "Is there people around you? Like, did you just get off work or something?" I'm like, "Yeah, I actually just did." Are you doing? And so what was really dope about it is I pay attention to the little readings that she's given me throughout the weeks, because they all connect to each other. And if I take it and I utilize it and I break it down, right, and I put it into motion, incredible things happen. You know what I mean, with the advice and the information that comes through you. So thank you for that. And I think I wrote a review. I don't know if I wrote a review, if I wrote a comment, or because it's just amazing, people. So if you're curious and you want to hear something that's amazing and will really add value to your life, hop on and check her out for real. You're good. You'll be surprised and you won't be disappointed.
It blows me away. It really does. I'm like, whoa, really? That's happening? That's cool. Yep.
Yes. All right, y'all. Well, thank you very much for tuning in to another episode, and we will be seeing you. We don't know when, but soon.